Hey everyone, this week's video I'm going to talk about autism and Asperger's disorder and how does it relate to mental illness. So stay tuned. So like I said, this week's video topic, it comes from so many questions and concerns from all of you. How does our autism or Asperger's disorder affect our mental illness and how does it link? Now, before I even get started, I want to just make everybody aware of how common this is and how many people have this disorder. And in Forbes magazine recently, they published that 1 in 50 children suffer with some form of autism because, like many of you know, they call it the spectrum, where we have Asperger's and autism and kind of everything that falls in between those two. Something, I guess, I don't want to get too caught up in diagnostic criteria of this, but the difference between autism and Asperger's is that autistic children, when they're younger, we will notice as parents that they tend not to be as verbal and they won't try speaking, and as they get older, they'll have trouble reading people's expressions. Like if someone really struggles and has a problem with autism and I furrow my brow and I'm like, what does this mean to you? They might have trouble telling me what that means and what emotion is attached to that expression. And they have a lot of trouble reading people's body language and things like that. But someone with Asperger's is very verbal. They will talk, they will be fine, they will communicate and things like that, but they will still struggle to hold eye contact and to read people's emotional cues and body language and things like that. It really can make it very difficult for us, as for those people who suffer, to develop relationships and to feel loved and cared for. Now, the way that this links to mental health, as far as eating disorders, self-harm, depression, anxiety, all the topics that I touch on in all of my videos, kind of link back in my mind to how we self-soothe as a child with autism or Asperger's. And the things that children will do is rocking in place. We'll rock ourselves. A lot of times they'll hold their knees into their chest and they'll rock. They will even bang their head against the wall, bang their arms as a way to self-soothe. Because one of the struggles that they'll have is changes with schedule and changes in the routine that they're used to. They don't deal well with it. It feels very uncomfortable. They get very frustrated, and that internal frustration and aggression that they can feel because it's uncomfortable. I mean, we've all been in uncomfortable situations, right? And imagine feeling that probably times 50 when things are changed and you're not expecting it and you're not prepared, and they get very anxious. And so these are ways that they soothe. The rocking, like all of us, like in a rocking chair as a baby, that's very calming, so they will rock. And the banging of the head is almost a release of that aggression and that anger, that feeling that they have. Some will scratch themselves, bite. Other children bite themselves. Any kind of way to kind of release that. And I know that we can all relate to that. And you can kind of see where I'm going with this tie to the self-harm and the anxiety component. It is because of that struggle to self-soothe that many of us who struggle with autism or Asperger's may also self-harm or have high anxiety. And it can be because of that difficulty regulating our inside, I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's kind of that feeling of overwhelm when things don't quite go the way we'd planned. Those are other ways to release. And you can see that the banging the head and the scratching and the hitting is in itself a way of self-harm. And so because we've been doing that as a way to self-soothe, why would it change later? Do you know what I mean? So that's the link for that, for self-harm and for anxiety. I feel that that's why we find that there's such a close connection. And a lot of us who self-harm and have high anxiety also have been diagnosed with autism or Asperger's. Now, as far as eating disorders go, binge eating, purging, anorexia, all varied eating disorders. If any of you have ever worked with an autistic or Asperger's child, they are extremely picky eaters. It has nothing to do with health. It has nothing to do with the types of food. It's all textural. It's all smell. It's very, for the most part, I mean, I used to do floor time therapy when I was in school. It was one of my first jobs with children with autism. And one of my clients would only eat bacon if his mom cooked it in a certain frying pan. I think it was like orange on the bottom. I think it was the orange frying pan, and it had to be cooked to a crisp, like so extremely crispy that like it would half the time mom would put it in the Ziploc and it'd be like crumbles, but he didn't care. It was the texture. It had to be really crispy. So it wasn't that he was worried about eating meat or it was a greasy meat. He didn't even care. It wasn't anything to do with that. It was the texture. So for a lot of people who struggle with this, when they want a certain type of food and they like a certain type of food, they may binge on it as they get older. It may be the only food that they eat, so they just eat a lot of that one food. Or they're extremely picky and nothing feels safe and we don't know how it's going to feel and we get really overwhelmed and we may get that building feeling, so we may not eat anything. It may lead to restricting, which then can lead to binging, and you can see how we can kind of cycle in an eating disorder like phase and how it ties to autism or Asperger's. Now, I know that this is a really tricky topic and there's a lot of things I could go into off of this, but I want to try to keep it simple and show you how the two are so closely tied and why we may, as adults, find out and get a diagnosis of autism or Asperger's and think, how'd they not notice this before? But like I said, it's on a spectrum. And I have met so many people. Like I said, 1 in 50 children they estimate to have some form of it. We're high functioning. This is nothing to do, this isn't like a learning disability. We aren't handicapped in any way. This just kind of shows us why we've had that internal anxiety and that overwhelmed feeling, and we didn't really have a way to self-soothe, and we've used our eating disorder, our depression, our anxiety, our self-harm as a way to bring that level down and to kind of cope. And so just like I've talked about in my workbook, if you haven't checked out my workbook, hop on my website and download it. We will slowly learn ways to self-soothe using different techniques like journaling, art therapy, collages. I will get more into in my future videos, ways to stretch and use our bodies as a way to soothe. There are a lot of tools that we can use to self-soothe that don't involve those unhealthy tools we've been using for a long time. But I hope that this helps shed some light on the links between these two disorders and how we, as people who struggle with both, can still help ourselves fight back against those urges and work towards a healthy mind and a healthy body. So make sure you subscribe to my channel because I put out videos every Monday, and I also do Q&As during the week, so you don't want to miss those. And leave your comments below. Let me know what your experience is and if there's a topic within this that you would like me to touch on more, because I always listen and I always read all your comments. Even if I don't get through them all and don't answer them all, I always read them and I always make notes and take them to heart. I love you all. Have a great week. I don't want to healthy my healthy body myself into an oblivion.
Yeah, that's cool. It's good.
Oh.
Change it up. You get fresh.
Yeah. Ugh, I got itches.
What do you think?
I think it was good.
I do too. I like that.
I mean,
No, I like that one.
you never listened to the content. Were you even listening?
I was listening.
You were tweetering. I saw you.
But I was listening too.
Oh, okay.
I just don't make eye contact with the camera so because sometimes you yell. Don't look at me.
Don't look at me.
Okay.
I would like you to make me a sandwich, though. I crack myself up. Nobody else but myself. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it's normalized and they realize it happens to a lot of people and it's still, I don't know, that it makes sense why it's connected, you know?